The blue bicycle. When I was 10, I wanted a bicycle. Not just any bicycle, a blue one. I saw it every day in the shop window on my way home from school. It had a shiny silver bell, a leather seat, and smooth tires that promised speed. To me, it wasn't just a bicycle. It was freedom. I told my parents about it. My father looked at me over his newspaper and said, "A bicycle like that isn't cheap." My mother patted my head and said, "Maybe one day. Maybe one day." I hated those words. They sounded like a polite way of saying no. So, I decided to earn the money myself. I started small. I collected empty bottles from the park and took them to the recycling station. 10 cents for a small bottle, 20 cents for a big one. I mowed my neighbor's lawn. I walked dogs, even a grumpy one named Max who liked to chase squirrels but never catch them. It was slow work. Some days I thought about giving up. My friends played soccer while I picked up bottles. They bought ice cream while I saved my coins. They laughed when I told them about the blue bicycle. "You'll never save that much," one of them said. "It will take forever." Maybe he was right. But every time I passed the shop window and saw the bicycle, I felt something. A quiet voice inside me, not loud but steady. "Keep going." One day, after nearly 6 months, I counted my money. I was still short. The bicycle was so close, yet still far away. That night, I sat outside on the steps, feeling the weight of my empty hands. Maybe I had wasted my time. Maybe I was too small to chase something big. Then, my father sat beside me. He didn't say anything at first. Just looked at the stars. "You worked hard," he finally said. I nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded bill. "Here," he said. "The last bit you need." I looked at him in surprise. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because you didn't give up." The next morning, I walked into the shop and bought the bicycle. I rang the silver bell all the way home. At first, the blue bicycle was perfect. The wind rushed through my hair as I rode down the street, the bell rang like laughter, and the world felt bigger, full of places I could now reach. I rode everywhere, around the park, through the quiet streets of our neighborhood, even to school, where my friends finally stopped laughing at me. But then, one afternoon I fell. It happened fast. I was speeding down a hill, feeling invincible, when I hit a small rock. The bicycle wobbled, my hand slipped, and suddenly I was flying. For a moment, time slowed. Then, bam! I landed hard on the pavement. My knees burned, my palms stung, and when I looked over at my bicycle, I saw the front wheel spinning uselessly in the air. A sharp pain shot through my leg. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. But because I felt something worse than pain. I felt stupid. I had worked so hard for this bicycle, dreamed about it for months, and now, in just a second, I had ruined everything. A group of kids rode past on their bikes. One of them, a boy from my class, called out, "Nice crash." The others laughed. I stayed on the ground for a while, my hands resting on the rough pavement, my head low. Then I heard footsteps. I looked up. An old man, wearing a brown hat and a sweater too big for him, stood nearby. He had been sitting on a bench, feeding the birds. Now, he looked at me with a small smile. "You fell," he said. I didn't answer. "You know," he continued, tossing a few breadcrumbs to the pigeons, "I once fell off a horse. Broke my arm." I frowned. So I learned something that day," he said. I waited. He smiled and stood up, dusting off his pants. "Falling doesn't matter. Getting up does." Then, without another word, he walked away, leaving me there with my scratched knees, my bruised pride, and my broken confidence. I looked at my bicycle. The chain had slipped off, the handlebars were twisted, but it wasn't ruined. Slowly, I got up. I wiped my hands on my jeans, took a deep breath, and fixed the chain. The front wheel was a little bent, but I could still ride. I pushed the pedals. At first, it hurt. But by the time I reached home, I was smiling. After the fall, I became more careful. I rode a little slower, watched for rocks, and kept both hands on the handlebars. But something had changed. I wasn't afraid anymore. The blue bicycle wasn't just my dream now. It was a part of me, scratches and all. One afternoon, on my way home from school, I decided to take a different route. There was a dirt path behind the old bookstore that cut through a small forest. I had never taken it before, but I had seen older kids use it. It looked faster, more exciting. I hesitated at the entrance. The path was narrow, the trees stretched high above, and the ground was uneven. Then I thought about the old man's words. Falling doesn't matter. Getting up does. I gripped the handlebars and pedaled forward. At first, it was easy. The cool air smelled like pine, and golden sunlight streamed through the trees. I felt like an explorer, like I had discovered a secret world only my bicycle and I knew about. Then I hit the mud. It happened so fast. One moment, I was gliding over the path, feeling like a hero in an adventure movie. The next, my tires slid, my feet flew off the pedals, and I landed face first in the mud. For a second, I didn't move. Then, I sat up and wiped my face. Thick, brown mud covered my hands, my shirt, even my eyebrows. A few leaves stuck to my hair like I had lost a fight with a tree. And then I started laughing. Not a little chuckle, but a real, deep, uncontrollable laugh. It was ridiculous. I had worked so hard for this bicycle, fallen once already, and now here I was, looking like a swamp monster. When I finally stopped laughing, I picked up my bicycle. The wheels were caked in mud, but it still worked. I walked it the rest of the way home. When my mom saw me, she gasped, "What happened to you?" I grinned. "Took a shortcut." She sighed and pointed to the garden hose. "Hose yourself off before you come inside." As the cold water splashed over me, I thought about something. Life wasn't always about riding fast or taking the perfect path. Sometimes it was about falling, getting muddy, and laughing at yourself. A week after the mud incident, something unexpected happened. At school, a boy named Ryan, one of the fastest cyclists in our neighborhood, was talking about a big bike race. It was happening that weekend at the park. Anyone could join. "You should sign up," my friend Leo said, nudging me at lunch. I almost choked on my juice. "Me? In a race? Why not? You ride everywhere now. You're pretty fast." I looked at Ryan, who was sitting at the next table, bragging about how he was going to win. He had a sleek red racing bike, the kind that looked expensive and professional. I glanced down at my blue bicycle. It had scratches, a slightly bent front wheel, and dried mud still stuck to the pedals. "No way," I said. "I'd lose." Leo shrugged. "Maybe. But so what? You won't know unless you try." I thought about that for the rest of the day. That night, I sat outside with my bicycle, running my fingers over the handlebars. Could I really do it? Could I race against Ryan and the other kids? The old man's words echoed in my head. Falling doesn't matter. Getting up does. I sighed. Fine. Let's do this. Saturday morning arrived. The park was packed. Kids lined up with their bikes, parents and friends cheered from the sidelines, and a man with a whistle stood at the front, explaining the rules. I positioned myself at the starting line, gripping my handlebars tightly. Ryan was next to me, smirking. "Hope you don't fall again," he said. I ignored him. My heart was pounding, but I took a deep breath. Just ride. Just enjoy it. The whistle blew. We took off. At first, I stayed in the middle of the group. Ryan and a few others sped ahead, their fancy bikes cutting through the wind. But I focused on my own pace, pedaling smoothly, feeling the rhythm of the ride. Halfway through, something happened. Ryan hit a bump, wobbled, and suddenly, he fell. I rode past him. He was fine, just struggling to get back up. For a second, I considered stopping. Maybe I should help. But then I remembered, he never stopped when I fell. So I kept going. The finish line was close. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but I pushed forward. And then I crossed the line. Not first, not second, but third. Leo ran up to me, cheering. "Dude, you did it!" I looked at my bike. Scratched, bent, not the fastest, but mine. I smiled. Maybe I didn't win the race, but I had won something bigger. After the race, something strange happened. Ryan, the fastest kid in our neighborhood, walked up to me. His red racing bike was covered in dirt, his knee was scraped, and his usual smirk was gone. He stared at me for a moment, then said, "You're better than I thought." I blinked. Thanks." Then, without another word, he got on his bike and rode away. Leo clapped me on the back. That's basically Ryan's way of saying he respects you. I laughed. It felt good, not just finishing the race, but knowing I had pushed myself. That evening, as I rode home, I took the long way through the park. The sky was painted in soft oranges and purples, and the air was warm. My legs were sore, but I didn't care. I thought about the last few months. I had saved every coin to buy my bicycle. I had fallen. I had gotten back up. I had laughed at my mistakes. And today I had raced, not to win, but just to try. I smiled. I realized something important. It wasn't really about the blue bicycle. It was about the journey, the things I learned, the way I changed. As I reached my street, I rang the silver bell one last time. Maybe this was the end of the story. Or maybe, like my old friend the bicycle, life was just getting started. Here, there is no end.